Now, when we come to this last section on the Sermon on the Mount, not only are we to think about what has been shared by the Lord and those who heard it, in this particular occasion, or on this particular occasion, we get to see the response. How they responded to what Jesus said. How they reacted. And in a word, they were astonished. They were amazed at what he had said. And he called them, as this sermon ends, he calls them to a decision. He gives these two gates and two ways and two builders, and at the end of it all, he's leaving them with a choice. And that choice has been left for individuals ever since Jesus preached this. And we are aware, as we look throughout the Old Testament and in the New Testament, there's always been this call. Who are you going to serve? You know, what are you going to do? What's going to be your choice? And while we know that God influences our life and our hearts, we know that a responsibility falls on us is what are we going to do? It's God allows us. He wants us to love him. He wants us to respond to him. In the Boston area, they have an art museum that is there. And in this art museum, there's this big canvas picture or painting that was done by this French painter named Paul, I think it's pronounced Gauguin. And it's an interesting painting. It's about 5 by 12, sort of almost like a banner-looking painting. And it has all kinds of pictures on it. And the idea, evidently, that Paul was trying to display is the different stages of life. And what's interesting is what the title of this particular painting is. It's supposed to be his best painting. It was painted about 125 years ago. And this is what it says. This is how it's described. The name of the painting is this. Where did we come from? What are we? And where are we going? That's this painting. Where did we come from? What are we? And where are we going? Well, as Jesus walked this earth, he answered all of those questions. And when this concludes, this message concludes here in Matthew chapter 24, it really tells to us and says to those who have heard this message, these are the choices and these are the options. You know, those are questions that perhaps in sobering moments people can have. You know, what is going to happen? You know, I've been by the bedside of individuals that have gotten incredibly bad news, and to see it look into their eyes and it's like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to go on from here? And knowing that the only source, the only hope is the fact of what God has for us. And as we look at this story today, it really helps us to understand, because Jesus talks about these houses that are being built. And these houses represent lives, our lives, people's lives. Everyone's building a house, as we will see. Everyone's building a life. You're building it with, what are you building it? How are you building it? Makes a world of difference. Because there is a storm that's coming. A storm that every one of us will face. At the end of it all, there is a storm that we will all face. What's going to happen at the very end when you face the storm of storms, when you realize that your life is done? It's over. Then what is going to happen? And this, as Jesus concludes this, he concludes it so seriously, so that nothing is missed, that it won't be missed. if you don't hear what I say, or if you don't listen to what I've said and do what I've told you to, when the storm comes, you will not be prepared. Now, throughout life, we have different storms that happen in our life. And some of them are tough, and some of them are all of them, I could say, tough. But there can be at different levels and different ways that you're facing. But it was interesting when I was reading this that I noticed that the definite article was there. The rain came. The wind came. The flood came. So, I mean, it's not just any flood or a flood, but it was the flood. It was the rain. It was the storm that happened, that took place. The wind that blew. And what a challenge that is there. Only God can answer the questions of where do we come from? Who are we? Who are we? And where are we going? Only God can do that. But see, they were astonished because as it says at the end of this passage, never, he says, it says, it says, and they said the people were astonished at the teaching because he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. One having authority. You will remember, especially earlier on, the statement would say, you have heard it said, and then Jesus says, but I say, but I say, but I say, but I say, but I say. And they no one talks like that. But I say this. He spoke with authority. Authority, he has the final word on everything. He has the final word on everybody. Back it up just a few verses, and you will hear Jesus saying that they will be those who will come before me. They will come before me, become before me. He has the final authority in this. They had never witnessed it like this. You remember in John, somewhere around John chapter 8, and they were talking about Jesus, and they said, never a man spoke like this. Never a man spoke like this. Jesus astonished people because he not only had the truth, he was the truth. Now let's pause here and let's read these verses so that we can have them in our mind and in our thinking as we move forward. We're familiar with this. This is such a valuable lesson, and there's so many insights that we can draw from this. But the point that I think I want you to keep in mind in these verses and in this section here is that Jesus is talking about lives, and he's talking about the ultimate end and what's going to happen, and to be prepared to make the right decisions. The right decision. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. Just as a side note, that's the last thing he said. That's the last thing Jesus said. And great was its fall. Oh, remember that, he says. Remember. It wasn't a simple fall. It wasn't a minor fall. It wasn't just casual or too bad. Great was the fall. Great was the fall. You know, it's one thing to mess up in life, and people do that. And we'll make a practical illustration of that in a few moments. But this fall is great. There's a lot of things you might miss in life. This one you don't want to miss. You know, I've told this story at different times. When I was younger, my mother would take me to the Detroit Tiger baseball games. And we would go there, and then one day I went with a friend, and Detroit was doing well playing the Boston Red Sox there at Tiger Stadium. And I decided at the bottom of the eighth, we were doing well, that me and my buddy would go ahead and leave and catch the bus and go home. And Mom said, fine, for us to do that. I'm 14, and she, I thought I was old enough to be able to do that, and she let me. But unbeknownst to me, Dick Raditz was pitching for the Boston Red Sox, and he got mad because he got pulled. And as he was heading back to the dugout because he had been pulled, he took his glove off. We happened to have seats probably about 10 or 12 above the dugout, and he took his glove and threw it into the stands. And my mother said it fell in my seat. But I happened to be gone, and they about killed her climbing over her to get that glove. I missed it. A 14-year-old getting a major league baseball glove, wrong place, wrong time. As a disappointment that I have remembered for the last so many years, so many years. I've even tried to find his family to see if there was a glove I could purchase so that I would say, get a second chance at this. But I have his picture in my phone. I have Dick Raditz's picture in my phone because of that mistake that I made that I could have had. But this is a great fall. So it was. When Jesus had ended these sayings, that the people were astonished at his teaching. For he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Oh my, what a difference it makes. What a difference. Two builders, wise, foolish. The application has eternal consequences because of the decision. And that's what I put there. I said the primary application of these two house builders is the eternal consequences that they experience because of their decision. Now notice again, as we would go back to the verses, notice again, what's the first word? Okay, that's how I saw it. Can you not see it? Am I in your way? All right. What's the first word? Yeah. All right. Therefore. Again, that ties everything that has been said. Chapter 5, 6, all of 7. Therefore, you have heard everything that I have said. You've heard all of these illustrations. You've heard all of these instructions, all of these insights. Therefore, everything that I have said to this point, you need to apply. You need to apply it, and you need to do it. So just 3 simple points, I think. First of all, I want to talk about a common comparison between these two people, these two builders, this wise man and this foolish man. They both wanted to build a house. Now, I don't know. Jesus was a carpenter bricklayer. All right, that would be the idea when he was growing up with his stepfather Joseph. And so this would have been a thought or an understanding, because he no doubt it would have made given wood and stone and things to help people. He would have understood construction. And so when he's talking, he grew up in that arena where building and and making sure you had a foundation would have been understood. In Luke's account of this, it says that the wise man dug down deep. You want to keep that in mind. The wise man dug down deep. Now, each of these are representing lives. They desired to build a house. They wanted to. They didn't plan to fail. They didn't plan to fail. I don't know if I've ever met somebody that planned to fail. Pastor, I'm going to come in there. I want to talk to you because I'm planning to fail. You know, this is my plan. I'm going to mess up here and then I'm going to mess up there. I'm not going to do that. I don't know if I've ever counseled or talked to somebody that has said to me they're planning to fail. No, these two builders did not plan to fail. Neither one planned to fail, but one of them did. See, it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by accident. But if you don't do what's necessary, it's inevitable what's going to happen. See, it was the way they determined to build their house. Each one of them had a choice. How are you going to do it? How are you going to live your life? How are you going to live your life? How am I going to live my life? How we determine with the choices we make will have an effect of what is happening. Now, the point's clear. They heard the message and they're building the house. But what is crucial and what really comes to matter is that what's going to take place later down the line if you don't do it correctly. If you don't do it. Everyone who hears is building a house. You're building one, I'm building one. Oftentimes, if you're at a memorial service, and those of you who know Thelma Leach and maybe be part of it, I think the funeral is going to be a week from tomorrow, but oftentimes when we will do funerals, you will hear me talk about a life sentence. Everybody has a life sentence. Your life is saying something. My life is saying something. What is your life saying? And so when I share in funerals, I listen to the family. If I know the person, I take a statement from their life, or as I've seen their life, and if I can summarize it, and of course it's arbitrary on my point and on my part, but I look for something, that's a statement of their life. Well, what we are building right now, we're writing a summary of our life. We're writing it. And when somebody thinks of Danny Brown, there's a sentence, a phrase, a thought. All right? Is that, man, he preaches too long. That's all I can remember about him. Okay? No. There's a thought that comes. It's always funny when you have wireless mic and you try to turn like you're turning away from the mic. It doesn't. We're building a house. You're building a house. I'm building a house. And what it appears to be right now, we're just coming along and going along. But the second part of this is we begin to see, it's common that we're all building, but we begin to see a contrast between these two builders. One's wise, one's foolish. One's built on the rock, one's built on the sand. One of the funniest things that happened to me as a young pastor, we were building a parsonage for the church up in Grayling, Michigan. All right, Michigan, we use the hand, okay? All right, it's about right up in there, all right? Grayling, Michigan. And if you were in National Guard, there's a National Guard place up there that they go every summer and just drive you crazy, shooting boom, 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 boom. For 2 weeks, they just blow up things there. But So we're building this parsonage, and I had this excavator that was part of another church that was going to give us a real good price and to dig the hole. And so he dug the hole for us. And now we're getting ready, and Connie's dad's going to come up and going to help us to lay the foundation. You got to put in footers. I had no idea what a footer was. Okay, I didn't know what a footer was. You might not know what a footer was. They sent me to the store to get 16 penny nails. And I think, man, that's kind of expensive for one nail, isn't it? So we're building. So we're getting ready. And I happened to be at a meeting somewhere when they were, we got the foundation in. We got the footers in, and it's all there. And then I get a call from my foundation guy who's putting up the blocks, for the basement, for the parsonage. And he says, Pastor, I think there's something wrong. I said, what? He said, this thing is not square with the street. I said, what do you mean? And so the street, the guy had piled the dirt up and we couldn't tell. The foundation was like that. So we put the foundation in. And we did a great job. Now, can you imagine if the pastor's house set like that? I knew that guy was crooked. I just knew it. I just knew it. When he dies, they're going to screw him into the ground. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying, you got to be kidding me. But because we couldn't see, that foundation was wrong. And so you talk about having to recover from that. Any of you guys have ever done it? It's crooked. Let's see. It was like that. It was crooked. So how much of that foundation are we going to be able to use? Not very much. You know what I'm saying? We had to go over and do the whole thing, and it sure wasn't as nice the second time around as it was the first time around. And yet, stuff like that. Things need to be, in Michigan, I don't know if we use this term here in Ohio, we called it kittywampus. All right, anybody ever heard that term? Okay, all right, it was kittywampus, okay, and that was not a good situation to take place. Now, there's a contrast. The contrast is clear. Watch this, though. Both of them heard the message. Both of them heard the message. It wasn't like, that guy got to hear it and this guy didn't. So, they both heard it. They both knew how to build on the rock. They heard, this is how you do this. Build your house, your life on the rock. But only one did. See, as these last things have been explained to us or been given to us by the Lord, what is clear is that action has to take place. It doesn't happen again just by, oh, well, that's a good idea. No. Action has to take place. You can't just think, well, I'd like to do that. You must do it. You must act. Application is necessary. Obedience is the key to showing that one has received and taken the message to heart. Obedience is the key. Obedience. Did you hear what I said? Yes, I heard what you said. Well, then do it. Do it. Do it. It's taking it to heart. One cannot have a strong house, strong life without a firm foundation. Action and application are necessary. Necessary. You can hear it and not respond. We bought a car, and my daughter was driving it. It was a little Pontiac convertible, cute little car. But it had one issue. When it was empty, it was empty. When that thing hit that line, there was no 20 miles with the light. My wife will say, we got just above, empty there. I said, fine, we can make it to Cincinnati. She hates it when I say that. But I'm not concerned until the light comes on. Okay, when the light comes on, then, I probably should get some gas. I should probably think about it. When it gets to a quarter with her, she's looking, where's the gas? But my daughter, she didn't realize, I said, sweetheart, when this car says empty, it means empty. It means empty. You don't get any second chances. So I'm in my office. She's, coming late to church and coming. So, and she calls and she's at 675 and 35. And she says, Dad, do you think the lawnmower gas will work in my car? And I said, no, sweetheart, that's got oil in it. That will mess the car up. Well, I've run out of gas. And she probably ran out of gas 2 or 3 times because, now I told her, when it's done, it's done. Sometimes you just have to apply it. When it gets down to a quarter in that car, that's the way that it was. That's the way that it was. Or that's the way that it is with that car, or was with that car. Well, Jesus made it clear. They both heard the message. Both of them. They heard the message. They knew what to do. They both did it. They constructed the house. And what a difference. What a difference. Preparation is necessary. I was thinking of dumb things I've done in my life when I was told you don't do that. I was 10 years old, and we would go to the swimming pool, Patton Park in Detroit. And I decided that day I was just going to run right out of the locker room and jump right into 10 foot. No, I did not know how to swim. But I figured, I've heard enough stories. Just dive in and you'll figure it out. That's bad advice. Okay? The good advice, learn how to swim. Let somebody teach you how to swim. Go to swimming classes. Did I hear that? Sure. Did I listen to it? No. So I did. I ran right out and I just dove. I didn't dive, I jumped right into 10 foot. I was in trouble. And I started thrashing. And I was just, I wasn't that far from the shore or from the edge of the pool. And I'm just thrashing. I'm in trouble. And the next thing I know, I felt this shove against my back. Boom! And now I was at the shore. And I said, man, whoever shoved me, thanks. And it was the lifeguard. He had come, dove in to save me. And he said, you know how to swim? Well, I don't think so. He said, I would recommend you stay down at that end of the pool, okay? Until you do. You can have, you can be warned. You can be warned and not do anything about it. Say, I'm all right. I can jump in the deep end. I'll make it. Yeah. I'm just fortunate there was a lifeguard there that was paying attention. I mean, it could have been somewhere else I decided to do that. And that wouldn't have been, somebody else would be standing up here talking to you today. All right? There's a difference. The difference is you hear and you act. You hear and you act. As much as I hate to say this, it's going to be true. I mean, during this time that you're part of Bethel, you hear this my voice, okay? You listen to my voice. And you kind of, oh, that's Pastor Brown's voice. What's going to be sad is those who have been part of this church and have heard my voice will be hearing my voice for eternity. You'll be hearing me say, come to God, please. Make the right decision. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. And it's not because it's my voice, because there'll be other voices too that will be heard. The difference is you made the decision. All right, quickly. The critical conclusion. What happens then? What happens is what happens. Storms come. And then the storm comes. The storm. And the question that is most important for us to understand, and most of us do understand, and most of us have made the correct decision. But Jesus was talking to a group of religious people. These were Jewish people who had heard the law, had been part of the community. They are there to listen, to hear what he has said. They're not ignorant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That was their forefathers. But here the storm comes. Now, on the outside, their building looks the same. Connie and I had the privilege of going to California years ago, and we drove around where they have these streets that have houses that really aren't houses. They're only about that wide. I don't know if anybody ever been there and seen that. The houses are about that wide. But they're streets. It's a whole subdivision. Driveways, everything. And it's for, the series, Person goes home and he drives home and goes to the door. And when he goes out the front door, he's going out the back door. All right, that's just, the house is only that wide. But it's a whole street. And they use that for this guy is going home and that's where he lives, on Elm Street, in 1645 Elm. And he pulls into the driveway is there, everything, lawns, the whole deal. But there's nothing. Nothing. That's all it is. It's that wide. And if you get alongside, it's funny when you look at it, say, oh, isn't that interesting? That's not a very big house. We're not talking tiny house. We're talking no house. You got a front and back door. It's the same door. It's just the way that it is. If you looked at it, you think it's a regular house. If you looked at these houses that Jesus is talking about in this illustration, they look the same. They look the same. And when you look at people, they look the same. And then you notice when a crisis comes into their life, what is their foundation? What are their foundation? That's when you get to see a little bit. Have they dug down deep enough? Have I dug down deep enough that when those things happen, this isn't right. This isn't fair. I don't understand this. All these things are going to happen to us. What are we going to do when those storms come? Well, the danger lies because they think that everything is good and it looks good, but there's a fatal, fatal flaw. Because when the storm comes, or even when a storm comes, as I put, both buildings would look similar, but what happens or happen next would reveal that fatal flaw that existed. The one constructed on the sand falls. It says the one constructed on the sand collapses, and the fall was great. Great. And as I thought about that, it's almost like, oh my, didn't expect that. That's horrible. It's horrible. And when you hear people whose lives get taken away right away, the thing that you're saying, did they know the Lord? Did they pray? Were they ready to meet God? I mean, that is such a that is so important because nothing else matters. That's the storm that gets you. Everybody. How can it be? See, Jesus said there's going to be, up in just a few verses earlier, in Matthew 7:19, he says, there's going to be good trees and bad trees. And the tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. That's eternal judgment. That's the end of it all. That's the end. That's a finality to it. All right. Just a couple things. I kind of want to bring it home. We want to be ready ultimately. But people can experience losses in their life now. There are decisions that can be made that can produce new losses, now losses in their life. And, just dumb decisions, dumb choices. And, my simple words is, stop the self-destruction and receive God's grace. There's stuff that we do and it weakens, and we end up losing what God intended for us to experience. And I do get concerned with people now losses, the now losses that they've experienced, and it's unnecessary. And then I think of those even in this room and those that you come in contact with, that they may be in right now. It's not the final storm, but it could be the storm of their life. The storm. The storm of their life right now. And maybe things will never change. We don't know. But it's one of those things, the wind never stops blowing. You go to bed thinking about it, you get up thinking about it. And sometimes it feels like it's overwhelming. Like a flood is overwhelming. And you're in over your head, and God, push me to the side of the pool. Have somebody push me to the side of the pool. But let me say this. Person that may feel like they're in the storm, you're not alone. You're not there because of sin. You're not there because of lack of faith. Just keep praying, keep asking, and keep knocking that you might experience God's presence. That is my prayer. But let me tell you the most powerful statement that I could make, that you could make in the midst of a storm. In the midst of a big storm in your life. The most important statement one can make is say in the storm is this. And from the heart of hearts say it. God be glorified in my life. Somehow, God, take this pain and this loss and be glorified in my life. Get glory out of this, God. Nothing will please me more, Lord, ultimately, than you getting glory. I suppose, and I close with Job's statement. He said, though he slay me. Job of old said, though he slay me, yet will I serve him. God got glory. That's what we want. Now that's not easy. It's not easy, but it's powerful. And it comes from a life that is dug down deep. You may not be there. I may not be there. But dig a little deeper.